Welcome. Welcome to this OpenShift Commons briefing. As we do on Wednesdays, we talk to folks who have built certified operators, and Sysdig has been one of the very early adopters of the operator framework and the operator pattern for using their tooling on OpenShift and Kubernetes in general. And we are thrilled today to have one of our favorite folks, Dan, otherwise known as Pop, Papandrea, and we're going to do something a little different. We're going to have Dan, who is well known for doing great interviews and his own POPCAST, interview Loris Degioanni, and we'll figure out just where everything is going with Sysdig and Falco and talk a little bit about securing and observing Kubernetes and where the future is taking us with Sysdig. So take it away, and let's do some more deeper introductions than that.
Don't adjust that dial. You're not looking at a POPCAST right now. We're on OpenShift Live. So I have my dear friend, the founder here. And so, Loris, do you want to give an intro here before we get going?
Sure. My name is Loris. I'm the founder and CTO of Sysdig. Sysdig is the secure DevOps company, and we offer visibility and security products. We were born as an open source company, and we apply deep visibility to offer essentially security products and visibility products for Kubernetes, cloud native, and containers.
And taking off the POPCAST hat and putting on, I'm the field CTO at Sysdig, and I work with Loris and strategic accounts and strategic partners like Red Hat to bring your dreams when it comes to observability and security and visibility in your tools to fruition. I was employee 20, I think, of Sysdig, and I remember that interview like it was yesterday. It was, I interviewed with Loris, and it was really a great time. But I think we should kick it off, Loris, in terms of, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I was just saying, it feels like we've been working together forever. So I don't know about employee 20, but definitely we've been partners for quite a bit at this point, eh?
Inch by inch. We'll get to that in a little bit too. So I want you to tell me about Sysdig. I mean, just tell me about how we started. Like, what is Sysdig, and tell me how we started.
Yeah, sure. So Sysdig started at around 2014. It's my second company. My first company was called Case Technologies and was the commercial entity behind an open source network analyzer called Wireshark. If you've people in the audience have done networking and packet capture, they might have heard about Wireshark. Very popular project that I started contributing to when I was very, very, very early on, when I was a student at a university in Italy. So I've done essentially open source since 1999, when open source was still something weird, very different from today. The first company was acquired. I started in 2005. It was acquired in 2010 by a bigger company called Riverbed. And at the time we had a pretty sophisticated product suite for visibility and performance management of applications based on network packets, which is what I've done my whole career before, which was great. But clearly the world was changing. The world was moving toward cloud. AWS was starting becoming popular. A little company called .cloud was renamed into Docker, and the whole revolution, of which we are part today, was really at the very beginning, and it was clear that this was one of those major shifts in IT. And Sysdig essentially started with the idea of applying the same visibility, the same richness data, the same context that you could get with packets in the previous generation, and you couldn't anymore because you cannot use the spam port of the router when you're renting instances from AWS. You cannot capture packets when you have, like 500 containers running on a single machine, and there's, no place on the network to get what these containers are doing. So from one point of view, packets are rich in information, very versatile, and allow you to, like, in a very horizontal way, you just sit somewhere on the network and you see everything. I used to say packets never lie, but how do you do that in a world of containers, orchestration, Kubernetes, OpenShift, and in a general way, modern cloud-based applications? And essentially, we started the company with that in mind. Essentially, the question was, if you could start with a blank sheet of paper and really create the solution that is perfectly tailored to the new world of containers and orchestrated containers, what would you create? How would you approach this from the technical point of view? And that's how our original technology based on capturing system calls with containers and Kubernetes context, actually even before Kubernetes. So orchestrator context was born, and now, in 2020, I'm here doing this interview and talking to you, Pop, and quite a bit has changed and quite a bit has grown, both in the ecosystem and at Sysdig.
Awesome. And again, from this basis, I think let's talk about like what is Sysdig now in terms of like, specific use cases that, I could talk about a couple if you'd like, because, you and I have worked on some of these use cases with, the product teams and also like the implementing teams and all of that. But there's a couple that come to mind that you can say, like, you use specific use cases around Sysdig.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, yes, feel free, Dan, to interject here, because you spend a lot of time essentially talking to, end users.
I learned under your wings, my man. So like, I've been with you in those things. So like, anyway.
But typically, I like to, when I describe what Sysdig does, I like to use 3 words: build, run, respond. This is essentially, I like to describe it that way, because it's like in life cycle of modern applications is probably one of the things that is changing the most, compared to what we were doing before with monolithic applications running on physical hardware or virtual machines, and releases that were happening, every 6 months or every year or something like that. Now we essentially all develop applications through a pipeline, right? Using CI/CD and following typically, like opinionated flows that go from, the code in your laptop, a Git repository, typically building container images that go into some image registry, and then these images go and are picked by an orchestrator and implement applications that run in production. And there are steps and gates and processes here that are different, for every organization and for every team, but also have stuff in common. At the build stage, it's important to make sure that we shift left as much as possible, that our code, our containers, our components are validated for functionality and especially for security, for they move forward in the pipeline and they go to the next stages of the pipeline. And here, for example, container image scanning, validation, configuration checking are all things that are very important and that Sysdig does. Then typically our images are run, they can be run into a development environment, they can be run into a test environment, they can be run into a production environment. Typically these environments have different profiles and different properties, but they share the need of you and your team being able to, first of all, understand what's happening. So insights and visibility is really the key here, and then protection, especially if the containers are run in production environment. And runtime protection is something that we are seeing becoming more and more important. And Sysdig is focused here strongly, not only from the commercial point of view, but from the open source point of view, through our tool that now is part of the CNCF in incubation stage, Falco. And Falco is really, we'll talk a little bit about that later maybe, but it's really like the de facto solution for runtime security and runtime protection for containers. And then, go ahead then.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, in terms of, going back to the build, run, respond, I mean, if you look at this from, the image scanning as a step one, right? And you're bringing these apps in production, you really need to, and I was on OpenShift Live with Chris Short before, and we ran through that whole process, right? This whole, from build all the way to the run, and from a forensics perspective, and then this post-mortem capability, right? So even from like container, like forensics use cases, and again, I mentioned this very large investment back then. You and I spent a lot of our time together, initially trying to like prove out the value of Sysdig. There was, this use case where, they wanted to have, visibility, but then also have, to build like new rule sets without having to involve the vendor, right? So things like building MITRE ATT&CK framework. So those use cases is super, super, high in terms of somebody touching a directory, understanding what they did in this, you talked about this, syscalls don't lie, right? Being in a container and be able to have this, and they're not black boxes anymore. You now have the ability to say, this thing happened. No other tool in the market can do that. I'll put us up against anybody out there, no matter what.
Yeah, and you were saying syscalls never lie. Actually, I said originally packets never lie, but you're right. Syscalls never lie, and they lie even less because they're closer to the application, right? So let's talk for a second about what we mean by syscalls. A system call is every time you are running an application, a process, a container on a Linux box, but not only Linux, any operating system, these applications need to do something other than just computing, right? They need to talk to the external world, they need to establish communications, they need to read and do input-output from files. So there's a bunch of stuff that is going on, and typically this requires the intervention of the kernel of the operating system, because reading a file essentially for an application involves telling the kernel, okay, open this file and give me the content of this file. All of this is system calls. So essentially the core technology behind Sysdig involves taking these system calls, finding clever ways to capture them in a way that is, from one point of view, super granular, but also very horizontal. So you don't have to worry about instrumenting every single container, linking libraries to your application and stuff like that. But you just essentially, through a number of different ways, tell essentially the operating system, okay, I would like to get all of this data in a very efficient way, give it to me. And then you're able to understand essentially everything that any single application does in terms of data, and what data is accessed, and what is read and what is written, in terms of network communications, in terms of users, what they're doing, because every time a user executes a command, changes a configuration, logs in somewhere, this generates system calls that are like the footprints, and by looking at these footprints, we're able to reconstruct everything. So packets never lie, system calls never lie.
Which is a natural segue into, okay, we talked about Falco a little bit, right? And I want to talk more about like what it is, what it does, the use cases. Again, that's our open source. I want you to talk to us about what is Falco.
Yeah, I already said multiple times that what we do at Sysdig was inspired by our previous life in with packets, right? And this is true for Falco as well. As I was saying, Falco is the de facto tool for runtime security in Kubernetes, and Falco is able to sit on a host, get this granular system call insights into every single process, and therefore every single container running on the toast, and takes all of this stream of system calls that can be, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions per second, and puts a rule engine on top of that, so that you can essentially be notified based on conditions or anomalies that happen on this stream of system call. Said like that, it's a little bit, like harsh and technical.
Right. So, I mean, if we boil it down to like what it does and what does it address, that's the big thing, because it does. And again, it's so hard. It's so hard because this thing does so many amazing things. But let's just boil it down to like, what are the pain points of what it does? Like, what are the pain points and what does it address? Right.
Yeah. So with Falco, you're able to be notified at runtime as stuff happens of a arbitrary number of anomalies that happen on your Kubernetes cluster. Let me give you examples. I don't know, somebody has gained, access to one of your containers and is executing something. Data is stolen and exfiltrated from your infrastructure. People are changing your configuration to do something with your cluster. Somebody has just started, a set of big Bitcoin miners in your infrastructure. These are examples of stuff that Falco can detect. Of course, it's much bigger than that. We have a rule set with hundreds of rules now that are essentially driven by the community. But this gives you a flavor. Essentially, Falco is like, very often I compare Falco to the security camera for your Kubernetes cluster, right? It's very important when you have a house, a piece of property that you care about, to have locks at the door, and in Kubernetes you can implement locks in different ways, through admission controllers, through network policies, through all of this kind of stuff that essentially allows you to like, I don't know, block somebody from entering, right? The admission controller prevents an image from entering your cluster, and that's like the lock on your door. But you still want, even if you have good locks, a security camera that allows you to understand if somebody snuck in, maybe from the window, maybe from the chimney. Hopefully it's Santa, but at the same time, you need to understand if something managed to get in a way that maybe you don't expect, and if somebody got in, you need to understand essentially what they did. And that's what Falco does. You deploy Falco through like a daemon set or through a Helm chart. It goes to any configuration, you start getting data, and Falco starts telling you, hey, somebody got in, and this is what they did, and this is where you need to take a look. So that's Falco in a nutshell.
And you know what I love about it? The Falco rule set is a good basis, right? But there's events and there's rule sets and there's outputs that you can do. Like you can output as gRPC, you can do it as JSON output, as HTTP. I mean, that's the beauty of it. And again, it's because it's an open source project. If there's something you want to contribute to, which again, everybody out there, go to falco.org. We have a Slack as well. Contribute to Falco. There's a lot of cool stuff that we're doing with, people in the community. I mean, just the other day, one of our people, Lorenzo, was working with Alex Ellis to help do like ARM64 support, which is crazy, like for Falco. It's, they're playing around with this stuff. It's just getting involvement from a community makes our product better. Very much the same as our lovely host here today from Red Hat. I mean, that's, how the whole open source ecosystem starts is, people contributing to the things that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry to cut you off there. Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I believe that a tool like Falco really fits well the dynamic of having a community, because if you look at what Falco does, and by the way, we're talking about packets. When starting Falco, I was inspired, I don't know, for the older people in the audience, by tools like Snort or Suricata or Bro, so intrusion detection systems, for network packets. And I've been in the space for long enough to witness essentially how well the the model of having a powerful, efficient rule engine fit with the community, because once you have an engine that is flexible, that we maintain essentially as a core maintainer team, that can be deployed easily and that you can trust in terms of performance and flexibility and integrations with the rest of the ecosystem, then any member of the community is free to customize it for themselves and the specific needs, because it's essentially it's a rule engine. From this point of view, we can compare it a little bit to OPA, right? Which is a generic, essentially policy engine, and then you customize it for your needs. But this customization nature also generates contributions from the community, which means that you will be guaranteed that your security camera always has the best detections, because you have a whole community of people that build detections for themselves by customizing it, but then contribute, some of these back to the community. And there can be a relatively little core team of developers that focus about making this super efficient. For example, recently I've been involved personally. It's always been a passion of mine on the rule engine, and try to find optimizations for the rule engine. But at the same time, while I do that and I go very deep, a user can really come and be part of the community and contribute just by, creating a rule for like a specific PCI compliance check, and that will become a benefit for the rest of the community. And then check after check after check, Falco becomes, like an extremely powerful tool for PCI compliance that everybody can use, and then for MITRE, and then for other, compliance standards. So as we go ahead, sorry.
I mean, my belief is it's the de facto kind of tool for runtime security on Kubernetes, OpenShift, and just in general. That's I believe it. And I think we got some questions from the Diane. Is that what you're coming on to remind me about the questions there?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I'm not so sure how my bandwidth is, so tell me if I'm breaking
No worries.
up. But
Great.
actually, one of the things that I'm curious about too is, and the thing that Sysdig and Falco save us all who are deploying containers and applications and services on Kubernetes and other places, is working with the compliance officers. And because historically, that's where you have to build the trust in order to be allowed to deploy your applications and your services. And so I think one of the things that Sysdig has done for us in the community is giving us a way to build that trust with the IT audit and the compliance officers. And if that has been besides the fact that you're doing all this wonderful stuff in the open source world, that if you didn't cover our behind for that aspect of deploying applications, we would have to be doing it ourselves. And that's a real heavy lift to do without something like Sysdig. So that's, I think, one of the huge value propositions for your corner of the market, and that you've done us a huge service. And so that for me, I love the packets never lie, and the syscalls never lie. I'm not sure we can prove that, but maybe you guys could. So that's it. So maybe a little bit about, because I know the conversation with compliance auditors and folks like that, how you help people have those conversations to trust the tooling. I think that building that trust inside of an organization, I know because I'm old, I can remember having to go through log files line by line with auditors like, yes, my database is really, doing this, and those transactions really are logged. But maybe if you could talk about your experience helping people do that and having those conversations.
Loris, you want to take the first part of it and I can take the second part? Is that okay?
Yes, I would start by saying I absolutely agree. And one of the things, again, I've been part of this industry essentially, from the beginning. I was there when Kubernetes did, release number 1. I've been following definitely the evolution of OpenShift since pretty much the very, very beginning. And what you're saying is clearly insightful, because more and more things like compliance or forensics is another one become more important when talking to people both in the community and in the industry. And this is clearly, in my opinion, one of the best indicators of the fact that our ecosystem is maturing, right? When we were at the beginning, like 2014, 2015, people were mostly worried about container image scanning, which is the first check that you need to fill, even if you're not really going into production, you know? And then you really need to start running, you know, because maybe you're doing experiments, you're doing just applications that are not critical. And then as your applications scale, become more critical, have more developers, have more users, then you start, okay, you know, runtime becomes important. Compliance becomes really important. You know, if I need to replace my legacy infrastructure with one that is based on containers and OpenShift, I need to make sure that I have the same compliance checks, you know, and this kind of stuff that maybe is not as sexy as, I don't know, working with the latest and greatest features in Kubernetes becomes really, you know, a critical thing. So I see these increasing interest in compliance, and as a consequence, the growth of a company like Sysdig is a very exciting indicator of the maturity of the Kubernetes market.
And Diane brings up a great point. And again, it's like I think right now, as we're seeing this, and again, you know, Red Hat's seeing this as well. It's a cultural shift, without a shadow of a doubt, right? The security teams were here, and the network teams were here, and then the DevOps teams were here, right? And so amalgamating the two teams, what do you need? Do you need to embed the security? So if a developer is like, well, why are they, you know, scrutinizing my builds and all? Well, it's because we have a common set of compliance rules that we're going, or, you know, from a build perspective or from a runtime perspective, might be, hey, the reason why we have to do this is your applications need to be compliant when they're pushed into an environment from a runtime perspective. And so from it's kind of our take on it is that, you know, we're actually helping to unite those two teams, because we're saying this is a common set that you're going to see, and here's a, you know, basis either from MITRE or some PCI compliance and tags from that perspective. That's, you know, part of our enterprise tool as well, is having this workflow that kind of provides that, you know, seamless kind of view that the developer can see vulnerabilities, or like at runtime perspective, they can see it, but it's all dictated from the same, they're all speaking from the same script, so to speak, if that makes sense, Diane.
Because the pipeline, oh, sorry, go ahead.
It definitely makes sense. And I think the interesting thing for me is I probably first came to Sysdig and other tools to debug my applications more than compliance. I mean, I think when developers first approach Sysdig, or admins or network people come in, they're using it because they need the tools to figure out this stuff. And the maturing of the audience for whom these reports and tooling and the trust issues have to be built out shows just sort of the next level of the Kubernetes ecosystem.
It's incident response. And again, if you think about it, if you extrapolate that term even from a troubleshooting perspective, right? You talk about this DevOps function, somebody's trying to debug why their pod crashed. I could tell you right now, the #1 blog we have out there is how pod crashing. And we have a blog we wrote, how to troubleshoot that with Sysdig. Now think about taking that from a runtime perspective and figuring out somebody terminaled into your container and wrote to the Etsy directory that's hitting all types of compliance on your production level. I want to know, that's a PCI compliance bench, that's something that's necessary, or the underlying host itself is in compliance. Now, again, if you're using OpenShift, they're going to plug for OpenShift, you're already hardened. So you already have some of that indemnity, right? So it's, you know, I'm not getting paid. Diane's not sending me and Loris a check for this.
I got no budget. Serious. I'm on the open source side. I got no budget.
Yeah. So do you want us to go into the next question, or because I see one about cloud scale Prometheus monitoring as well?
Yeah, that I'd be curious to hear more about that too. Yes, myself. So
Loris, you want me to get the first half and then you get the second half? So it's up to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Paper to draw. Sure. What is the question? Just general overview of what we do, or?
Why don't you start with that, because I don't think a lot of people are aware of this offering. Or at
Yeah.
least a little overview would help really nicely.
Yeah, it's one of the other tools and ecosystems that has taken the IT world by storm is the converging of visibility and monitoring into finally, after decades, an open standard, an open protocol, an open way to export and collect metrics, and a way that can be embedded similarly to Falco inside the platforms and inside Kubernetes easily. And this is Prometheus, right? Prometheus is great. And the most important thing about Prometheus is that it gives us essentially a common language around which we can have conversations about metrics. This common language is definitely the Prometheus protocol in the format for the Prometheus exporters, but also PromQL, the query language that is at the base of what Prometheus does, and then like Grafana is a way to visualize these metrics. Sysdig comes from a strong background in monitoring and visibility, and the way what we want to bring to the market in terms of Prometheus is from one point of view, decreasing the barriers, so making Prometheus easier to consume. And we have a commercial offering that includes essentially a bunch of exporters and dashboards that are curated and opinionated by Sysdig, and that can be used essentially in an easy and natural way. The other one is the scale. We built essentially an engine, a SaaS engine that is more or less infinitely scalable in terms of Prometheus, that you can trust in terms of stability and in terms of throwing at it the data of even sophisticated or big infrastructures, but that at the same time, differently from most of the other commercial monitoring solutions, is fully 100% compatible and host swappable with the Prometheus that you're using today. So if you're just using a single Prometheus server, or if you're using Thanos and Cortex, you can host swap and use Sysdig in a very natural way. And the other thing is we offer something that, especially for enterprises that maybe have a bigger size, has all of the integrations, ability to support, for example, teams of developers with segmented data, ability to integrate with RBAC and all of this kind of stuff that a bigger organization with many developers and many users needs for Prometheus. So our philosophy is always we support open source and we try to make it possible for people to really truly adopt standards and base their infrastructure on true standards. But when it's time essentially to bring it to the next level in terms of security, in terms of visibility, in terms of troubleshooting, you can trust Sysdig to be your partner, and you can have a partner that essentially has worked with the biggest companies in the world, and there's essentially a better tested solution that is fully compatible and fully host swappable with your open source solution.
Nailed it as usual, Loris. But I think I add one point to this is also we have a curated kind of hub. It's called I just think I'll also base this as well as OpenShift out of the box is amazing in Prometheus integrations. And so what we're doing is adding, again, as Sysdig does, right, is adding even more layers to that for you to be able to like get even deeper dissemination, do that troubleshooting, like Laura said, have that RBAC functionality. But also we have a curated list of exporters that you can have Helm charts to be able to deploy in your environment, something called promcat.io. You type that in chat, promcat.io. And basically what that's going to allow you to do is you have Helm chart to deploy new things that are out there. Because right now, what do? You go out there and you find an exporter and you cross your fingers that it's not going to bring your whole cluster down, because it might be something like a node exporter that somebody might have, really not put the testing in. We tested this, some integrations with, like, let's just say Nginx or, CloudWatch metrics, whatever. I mean, we've worked with like these various teams to be able to have that going. So that's another kind of key advantage we have, is this kind of curated, integration along with all the amazing stuff we do to make it cloud scale from a backend perspective. So I'm sorry, Dan, is there something else you want to say?
Promcat.io is new to me, so thank you for that. I hadn't seen that one before, so that's awesome.
I see Waleed in chat. He also mentioned Security Hub. That, again, great stuff there. That's something that, so all our Falco rules is basically, I'm sorry to take over, but that's basically where something, you can have like best practice configurations of Falco rules that you may not know about. Stuff like, securing etcd, or securing, your instances that are running in GKE, or, those types of things, or Fluentd rules. I mean, those things are happening right out of the box. Thank you so much, Waleed. It's good to see you, bud.
Yeah. So I think that the beauty of the open source community, and Waleed and everybody else is sort of showcasing that, is the willingness to share the recipes and cookbooks and templates for doing these things. And I think that's and with the different approaches with Prometheus and Falco and other things, and Helm and operators, this is really one of the things that is, I think, helping with the adoption of Kubernetes and securing it, and making sure that it matures in a way that we can all take advantage and build our innovations and do our workloads on it. So I'm
this is something we learned from our friends at Red Hat. I mean, with the, Ansible Galaxy and in the things you all are doing with operators. I mean, again, you are the, in terms of our relationship, we understand like, what you all bring to the table, and we want to help, benefit you as well. So that's what we do.
Yeah, well, and I didn't pay him to say that. So it's it is the open source model, and I think Red Hat drinks the Kool-Aid, and Loris, you've obviously been drinking the Kool-Aid. Oh, he's gonna put on his Red Hat jacket. I got my
it's getting a little cold in here, Diane. It's getting a little cold.
Oh man, we're gonna have to swag you out again soon here.
Yeah.
Isn't that the one thing that's missing from all these virtual events, is that there is no swag anymore? I don't know what I'm going to do for stocking stuffers at Christmas time. Yeah. So anyway,
yeah, I'm starting getting long T-shirts.
I'm getting some knitted OKD hats into the cool stuff store at Red Hat, hopefully in time for Christmas. So we'll send you some for being on the show. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your roadmap, what you see coming down the pike for Sysdig, for the offerings you have, or even in the evolution of Kubernetes itself, what you guys are thinking about. Yes, Waleed, I know the OKD t-shirt did not appear on your doorstep as it should have. We had some customs issues. So anyways, moving on from swag to roadmaps.
So yeah, I can take this one. In a general way, Sysdig as a company is betting on the fact that there's really, at this point, there's no question that a new stack is forming. And the new stack is going to be based on Kubernetes. And the new stack is going to be powerful, cloud native, and open source and community driven by nature. So we see essentially, we were talking just now, about the open source and the community approach. Not only we believe that this approach is going to be rich and powerful, but we also think that no vendor of success will be able to escape this dynamic in the future. What I mean is, for example, in security, which is an area, as we discussed, where the Sysdig is really focusing a lot of energy. The legacy approach of having solutions that are built in a proprietary way and brought to the market in a proprietary way, just not going to happen anymore. Kubernetes is designed as an open ecosystem, as a system based on standards, on API, on community collaboration, and that will have to be the case everywhere. So from the open source point of view, the way we see Falco progressing is really like we are, I was mentioning before, as we're designing Falco as a very, very powerful engine that is essentially pluggable. Our goal is it should be easy for anybody, essentially, ideally one-liner, to not only deploy Falco on Kubernetes, but also create the proper pipeline of collection and processing of the data to make Falco essentially insightful for you, and not only like when you have the security camera, is only good if you can do something, you know, with the data. If you're never able to look at it, it will be useful. So modularity, efficiency, and the ability to embed the tool wherever it's possible. From the commercial point of view, very similar philosophy. So we see Sysdig Secure, and Sysdig Monitor really evolve in a way that is as close as possible to Kubernetes, taking advantage whenever possible of the richness and power of Kubernetes. One way that I like to put this is better included, right? So don't go and implement some way of blocking like images from going into production when Kubernetes offers the admission controller. You know, don't try to do whatever, you know, like protection of containers when in custom ways, maybe using weird stuff like LD preload and so on, when Kubernetes gives you, I don't know, pod security policies or seccomp profiles, you know, or stuff like that. So try to create a tool that brings really critical, important functionality like compliance, which we're always working to enhance, like runtime security, like forensics, which we didn't really touch very deeply now, but it's very important because OpenShift Kubernetes orchestrates stuff away, right? So by the time you get a red light from one of your tools, and you know that you've been attacked, very likely your container is gone, you know? So what do? So all of this kind of stuff needs to be really offered to the users because it's so important and so critical, but needs to be done in a way that is Kubernetes centric and battery included centric. So from the roadmap point of view, if you follow essentially the roadmap of Kubernetes and what's happening with network mesh, what's happening, you know, with the things that have been added to the platform, what's happening with, you know, like the enrichments that tools like OpenShift bring on top of Kubernetes. They just wants to play with that, integrate, and essentially at any stage of the pipeline, being able to offer security, protection, compliance, monitoring, troubleshooting, incident response.
I think, we'll add really quick, and then we should probably, wrap it up, Diane. I think we're close to the time, but, in terms of just having a workflow from a security perspective, and, this isn't also for the larger enterprises. It's also like having security as a SaaS-based deployment as well. That's not something that other vendors can do, and we can, right? So we have this like, essentials functionality, which are the top five things you would need to be able to secure your environments. That maybe, look, securing, I'm doing a KubeCon talk talking about how Kubernetes by itself is not secure. There's things that you need to do to secure your pipelines, to secure your runtime capabilities, and Laura said the forensics capabilities. So what we're going to do is new event streams, easier workflows for you to be able to do that, and also for the enterprises or the SMBs or the mid-sized companies that just want to be able to like not worry about their applications as they should. We can help you from a security perspective and have this running in SaaS. The huge kind of advantage of Sysdig.
And another thing that the last one that I want to mention in terms of where we're going as an open source community for Falco and as a company, the other one is running Kubernetes is becoming a standard, everywhere in the data center, at the edge, in the cloud, and Falco as an open source tool and Sysdig as a company is really focusing a lot on helping our users and protecting applications everywhere. Just now, I was in a call with the Falco community and we were discussing ARM support, in terms of being able to protect the edge, because the edge is and will be running Kubernetes.
Oh, the cat's out of the bag now, Loris. We're going to have a lot of PRs on ARM now. Oops.
Oh, there we go. You just made my day. There you go.
Working on that, but that's an interesting one, or the cloud, being able to run, Falco and Sysdig on environments like I don't know, Fargate or wherever, you want to run containers everywhere. So Kubernetes is going everywhere. As a consequence, Sysdig needs to go everywhere.
I think that's actually probably a great place to sort of wrap this up, and maybe where, if you want, Dan, to share the resources slide that you had there, so that people know how to get a hold of you all and where to find more of this stuff. And you mentioned, Dan, you have a talk at KubeCon North America.
I do, yeah. I'm speaking.
So
speaking with
awesome.
Speaking at with actually Booz Allen. We're going to talk about pretty much like the inherent aspects of Kubernetes that aren't out of the box secure. So being able to do that. I have it flashing on the screen as well. Kind of, we have upcoming things. I mean, if you go to Sysdig right now, and in terms of our partner Red Hat site, we're well known for the blogs that we write in terms of releases and everything like that. So take a look at that. Security on Red Hat OpenShift. We actually wrote that with Red Hat on securing OpenShift. It's a very well placed document. We appreciate the working together with Red Hat on that. Again, Loris, do you want to handle the talking about joining the community and that type of thing?
Yes, join the community.
Loris is there. That's all you need. That's all you need.
You see the links on this page. Again, Falco. So first of all, we would love to see you as an open source user of Falco. Runtime security is really becoming more and more important for Kubernetes. And if you do runtime security for Kubernetes, then and if you care about it, then you need to come and take a look at Falco. We are there to help you. We are a CNCF project. We have our GitHub page. We have our weekly calls. So just go to the links on this document. Come, say hi. We'll be happy to chat with you, and we'll be happy to see you use Falco as a tool.
One last shameless plug, Dan, if I may. And again, these Bright Talk webinars we do, I've done a couple with some of the Red Hat folks, some of the other people in the ecosystem, but this one's very, very cool because it's literally, everybody can hear the vendors talk about stuff, but having an actual, 3 enterprises talk about how they, solved Kubernetes with anecdotal things with OpenShift and Sysdig, and is huge. So having anecdotal pieces where it's real, where people are using these technologies in real time. Check this out on November 10th. We have a Bright Talk. We'd love to see you all there.
Awesome. Because I'm saying that 2021 is the year of the end users, sharing their best practices and lessons learned, and events like that, and like the OpenShift Commons events. Really, the people we love to hear. We love to hear the updates from folks like yourselves on Falco and Sysdig and stuff. But I think the value proposition for hearing from end users is so much more real, and that's where we really learn some of the best kept secrets on how to use some of this software and how people are using it and configuring it to make solve their problems and help secure their system. So I really appreciate you guys coming here today. This is awesome. Listen to the POPCAST. You should, if you're not yet, you should be, and we'll definitely reach out and get updates as we go forward, and do some more work, and definitely check out Dan's talk at I know there's the Red Hat, nice Red Hat
number one.
Yeah, there you go. And if you're going to KubeCon North America, you can also add on. We're hosting an OpenShift Commons gathering on November 17th, day 0 of KubeCon, and we'll have a number of end users talking as well as updates on the latest release 4.6. And so there's going to be lots of really good content coming out. And hopefully you won't hit virtual burnout, but some of these stories are really some of the best things I've heard. So there's going to be some really cool stuff coming at KubeCon. So thanks again, Loris, Dan.
Thank you.
And this
Dan,
is
it's been a
really
pleasure.
rocked, and I'm looking forward to it. And so take care and be safe.
Be safe.